Have you ever found a piece of your heart tucked away in a forgotten corner, just when you needed it most? Hello, my dear friends. I'm Eva, 65 years young, chatting with you from my cozy porch in Eufaula, Alabama, where the lake breeze carries stories and the azaleas bloom with secrets. I'm so glad you're here, sipping coffee or tea, ready to share a tale like old friends. Today, I'm stepping into the shoes of Diane Foster, a woman whose strength will touch your soul, and I'll tell her story as if it's mine. If this moves you, hit that subscribe button. It keeps us connected, like letters between kin. Now, settle in, because Diane's journey, full of love and grit, is one you'll carry with you. Let's begin, shall we? Some moments carve themselves into your heart, don't they? They're not loud or flashy, but they shift the ground under you, like the first crack of spring in a frozen river. For me, that moment came 3 weeks after my son, Nathan, left this world, when I found a piece of paper tucked in his dresser drawer. It wasn't much to look at, just a folded sheet, edges soft from handling, with his familiar scrawl spilling across it. But those words, oh, they were everything. They brought him back to me, gave me a reason to stand up, to fight for the home we'd built together. Let me tell you how it happened, because it's a story I need to share, like sitting across from you with a cup of coffee, the kind that warms your hands and your soul. It was a quiet November afternoon in Worthington, Ohio, the kind where the sun slants low, painting the sycamores on Elm Street gold. Our house a split level from the 60s, with creaky oak floors and a stone fireplace Nathan loved felt hollow without him. He'd been gone 21 days. Taken by a heart attack at 34, no warning, no sense to it. I was 63 and the world I'd known, the one where Nathan's laugh filled the kitchen, had crumbled. I'd been drifting through those weeks, a ghost in my own life, until that day I sat on his bed, the mattress sagging under me, and opened his dresser. The room was bare now, stripped of the life it once held. The bookshelf where Nathan kept his coaching manuals and dog-eared John Grisham novels was empty. The air still carried a faint trace of his cedar cologne, but it was fading, like a memory you clutched too tight. Lauren, his wife, had been busy organizing. She said packing his things, tossing what she called clutter. I hadn't stopped her, not yet. Grief does that to you. It wraps you in fog, makes you forget how to move. But that afternoon, something pulled me to his room, a whisper in my heart saying, "Look closer, Diane." I slid open the top drawer, my fingers brushing wool sweaters Nathan wore to coach Little League. Underneath, I found a single sheet of paper, folded once, dated 3 weeks before he died. My hands trembled as I unfolded it, the kind of shake you get when you know you're standing on the edge of something big. Nathan's handwriting, all loops and slants, stared back at me. "If anything happens." "Mom, I'm sorry." It began. My breath caught, and tears blurred the ink as I read on. He wrote about regret, about how Lauren had pulled him away from me, made him feel he had to choose. "I didn't know how to fix it," he said. "But this house, it's ours, yours and mine. Don't let her take everything." I held that letter like it was Nathan himself, my chest heaving with sobs I'd kept locked away. It hurt, oh, it hurt, to know he'd carried that guilt, but it mended something, too, like dry, cracked earth soaking up rain. He'd seen Lauren's game, even if he couldn't stop it. And now, he was giving me the strength to fight. I pressed the letter to my heart, my silver locket, the one with Nathan's baby picture warm against my skin. I closed my eyes and saw him at 10, kneeling in our backyard, patting soil around a rose bush. "These'll live forever, right?" "Mom," he'd asked, his freckled face bright with hope. The roses were still there, in the garden behind this house. And so was I. I wasn't going anywhere. Let me take you back to where it started, to the day that set this whole fight in motion. It was Nathan's funeral, 3 weeks earlier, at Worthington United Methodist Church, just off the village square. The air smelled of lilies and candle wax, and the stained glass windows cast red and gold across the pews. I sat in the front row, clutching the funeral program. Nathan's high school coaching photo staring up at me, those hazel eyes. So like mine, frozen in a crooked smile. My fingers crumpled the paper's edge. Not from anger, but from the weight of losing him. 34 years old, gone in a heartbeat. I was still learning how to breathe without him. Lauren leaned close, her blonde bun sleek, her perfume sharp as the November chill outside. 1 week, Diane, she whispered, her voice low, meant only for me. Time to pack. My breath snagged, like a stone in my throat, but I didn't turn. She patted my shoulder, soft as a condolence, then stood, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor as she moved to greet a guest. I stared at the casket, at the roses draped across it, and felt the world tilt. She'd said it so casually, like telling me the weather, but it was a knife, clean and cold. "She's so strong," a woman murmured behind me, her voice thick with pity. "Losing a husband so young, I can't even imagine." I wanted to laugh, but it came out as a burn in my chest. Strong Lauren, in her tailored black dress, dabbed at dry eyes, her tears as staged as a community theatre play. I'd seen her that morning, checking her phone between sobs, texting someone about finalizing plans. Plans for what? I didn't know then, but that whisper told me enough. She wasn't grieving. She was plotting. The pastor droned on about eternal rest, his words floating over me like leaves on a stream. I barely heard him. My mind drifted to 1985, when Nathan and I planted those roses in the backyard of our old house. Before we moved to this one, he was all elbows and knees, his Reds cap tipped back, grinning as he scooped dirt. "We're a team, Mom," he'd said, and I'd laughed, ruffling his hair. That was before Lauren, before this house on Elm Street, before I poured my retirement savings into the down payment to help Nathan and her buy it. I'd given everything my security, my dreams of seeing Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon, because Nathan was my world. And now, sitting by his casket, I was being told to leave the home we'd built together. I stayed quiet through the hymns, the prayers, the soft shuffle of folks heading to the reception at the McConnell Arts Center. Lauren made a show of helping her grandmother to the car, her arm gentle, her smile perfect. But me... She left me standing on the curb, the November wind tugging at my coat. I rode back in Nathan's old Jeep, the one that still smelled of his cedar cologne. And she didn't say a word, neither did I. The silence between us wasn't grief. It was a line drawn, a battle I didn't yet know how to fight. Worthington's a small town, the kind where folks wave from porches and know your name at the farmer's market. Elm Street, with its sycamores and colonial homes, feels like a postcard, especially in fall when the leaves turn amber and crimson. Our house sits halfway down, its white siding weathered but proud. The garden out back a tangle of roses Nathan planted when we moved in. I'd always loved it here, the way the kitchen smelled of cinnamon and coffee, the way the fireplace crackled on winter nights. Nathan used to carve his initials into the mantel, laughing when I scolded him. That house wasn't just walls and windows. It was us, every memory we'd stitched together. But Lauren saw it differently. To her, it was a stepping stone, a way to something bigger. I didn't know her full plan that day, but I felt it in her whisper, in the way she'd started moving my things, my locket, my quilts into boxes marked Mom's stuff. She thought I was a guest who'd overstayed, not the woman who'd paid for the roof over her head. I'd been a school teacher for 30 years, teaching kids to read and dream in classrooms, that smelled of chalk and apples. I wasn't rich, but I'd given Nathan everything, and this house was proof. Lauren's words at the funeral lit a spark in me, though I didn't know it then. I wasn't ready to fight, but I was starting to see. Back in Nathan's room, that November afternoon, I folded his letter and slipped it into my cardigan pocket. My locket felt heavier, like Nathan was pressing it against my heart. I stood, my knees creaking, and looked out the window at the garden. The roses were dormant now, their buds tight against the cold, but they'd bloom again come spring, like me. They were tougher than they looked. I thought of 1978, when Nathan and I sat in the kitchen of our old rental, listening to Simon and Garfunkel on a transistor radio, him swinging his legs under the table. "You're my best friend." "Mom," he'd said, and I'd kissed his forehead, promising I'd always be there. I was keeping that promise now. Lauren's voice cut through the quiet, sharp from the hallway. "What are you digging for in there?" "Diane," she called, her tone light but edged, like a blade wrapped in silk. I turned, my hand still on the letter, and saw her leaning against the doorframe, her green eyes narrowing. She wore a cream sweater and jeans, her smartwatch glinting, always ticking, always counting something time. Money, plans. "Just looking," I said, my voice steady despite the pulse in my throat. "Old memories." She tilted her head, her smile thin. "Don't stress yourself. I can help pack if you need." I met her gaze, something stealing inside me. "I'm fine. Lauren, I know where everything belongs." Her smile flickered, just for a second, before she turned and walked away, her footsteps fading down the hall. I exhaled, my fingers brushing the locket. She didn't know about the letter, didn't know the fire it had lit. This wasn't just about a house, it was about Nathan, about the love we'd poured into every corner, every rose. And I'd fight for it. Quiet as a whisper, fierce as a storm. I learned something that day. You know, love doesn't stop hurting, but it gives you strength, like roots holding a tree through a gale. Nathan's letter was my roots, and I was ready to stand tall. I'd been a mother, a teacher, a widow, but now I was something more, a woman who wouldn't be erased. If this story's touching you, I hope you'll stick with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up with what comes next. It means the world to hear you're out there. And in the comments, tell me, what's kept you strong when everything felt like it was falling apart? I read every word you share, and I'd love to know your story. You ever sit somewhere, surrounded by folks, and still feel like you're the only one in the room? That's how it was at Nathan's funeral, 3 weeks before I found his letter. The Worthington United Methodist Church was packed, pews creaking under the weight of neighbors, friends, and faces I barely knew. The air was thick with lilies and candle wax, and the stained glass windows threw patches of red and gold across the hardwood floor. I was 63 sitting in the front row, clutching Nathan's funeral program like it could anchor me. His photo stared up at me, those hazel eyes, that crooked smile from his high school coaching days. 34 years old, gone from a heart attack, no warning, no reason. My boy, my world, was in that polished oak casket, and I was still learning how to breathe without him. I want to tell you about that day, not because it's easy, but because it's where this story really began the moment Lauren drew a line in the sand, thinking I'd crumble. It's like sitting down with you over a warm mug of coffee, the kind that smells like morning and promises a good talk. I need you to see it, to feel it, because it's the kind of hurt that changes you, but also the kind that lights a spark. Let's go back to that November morning, when the leaves were falling on High Street and my heart was breaking in ways I didn't yet understand. The church was old, its wooden beams worn smooth by decades of prayers and potlucks. I'd been coming here since Nathan was a boy, back when he'd fidget through sermons, swinging his legs under the pew. Now, the organ hummed a hymn I couldn't name, and the pastor's voice floated over me, talking about eternal rest. I barely heard him. My fingers traced the edge of the program, crumpling it without meaning to, and my silver locket, the one with Nathan's baby picture, felt heavy against my chest. I was alone in that crowd, a mother without her son, and the weight of it pressed me into the pew like a stone. Lauren leaned close, her blonde bun sleek, her perfume sharp as the frost outside. 1 week. Diane, she whispered, so soft only I could hear. Time to pack. My breath snagged, a jolt running through me like I'd touched a live wire. I didn't turn, didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction. She patted my shoulder, gentle as a condolence, then stood, her heels clicking as she moved to greet a guest. I stared at Nathan's casket, at the roses draped across it red, like the ones we'd planted together, and felt the world tilt. 1 week to leave the house I'd helped buy, the home where Nathan's laugh still echoed. She'd said it like it was nothing, like I was a tenant, not the woman who'd given everything for her and Nathan. She's so strong, a voice murmured behind me, thick with sympathy. Losing a husband so young. I can't imagine. It was Mrs. Delaney, who ran the farmer's market booth with the best apple cider. I wanted to turn and shout that Lauren's tears were as fake as her smile. But my chest just burned. Strong Lauren, in her tailored black dress, dabbed at dry eyes. Her face a perfect mask of grief. I'd seen her that morning, checking her smartwatch between sobs, texting someone about plans. Plans for what? I didn't know. But that whisper told me she wasn't mourning. She was scheming. I thought of 1978, when Nathan and I sat in the kitchen of our old rental, a sunflower yellow room that smelled of cinnamon and dreams. We'd listened to Simon and Garfunkel on a transistor radio, him swinging his legs under the table, me stirring pancake batter. "You're my best friend, Mom," he'd say. And I'd kiss his forehead, promising I'd always be there. That was before Lauren, before this house on Elm Street, before I poured my retirement savings into the down payment to help them buy it. I was a school teacher for 30 years, teaching kids to read and dream in classrooms that smelled of chalk and apples. I wasn't rich, but I'd given Nathan everything: my security, my plans to see the Grand Canyon because he was my world. And now, sitting by his casket, I was being told to leave the home we'd built. The hymn ended, and the pastor called for a moment of silence. I closed my eyes, trying to hold on to Nathan's face, but Lauren's words kept cutting through. 1 week, I saw our house in my mind, its white siding weathered but proud. The garden out back, a tangle of roses Nathan planted when we moved in. I'd loved it here in Worthington, this small town where folks waved from porches and knew your name at the market. Elm Street, with its sycamores and colonial homes, felt like a postcard, especially in fall when the leaves turned amber and crimson. The kitchen smelled of coffee and quiche, the fireplace crackled on winter nights, and Nathan had carved his initials into the mantel, laughing when I scolded him. That house wasn't just walls, it was us, every memory we'd stitched together. But Lauren saw it differently. To her, it was a prize, something to claim now that Nathan was gone. I didn't know her full game that day, but I felt it in her whisper, in the way she'd started eyeing my things, my quilts, my locket like they were clutter. She thought I was a guest who'd overstayed, not the woman who'd paid for the roof over her head. I'd been too lost in grief to fight back, too raw from losing Nathan. But that whisper, it lit something in me, a spark I didn't yet know how to name. Clara Thompson, my neighbor, caught my eye from across the aisle. She was 70 with a sharp tongue and a heart as big as Ohio. Her lips were pursed, like she'd seen Lauren's act and didn't buy it. Clara had lived next door for years, always bringing over zucchini bread or gossip from the knitting circle at the Griswold Centre. She'd known Nathan since he was a boy, cheering at his Little League games, and her presence now felt like a lifeline. I nodded back, a small gesture, but it warmed me, like a candle in a dark room. Someone saw me, even if the town didn't yet. The service dragged on, prayers and eulogies blurring together. Kyle Brennan, Nathan's old teammate who now ran a gym downtown, spoke about Nathan's kindness, how he'd coach kids for free, always with a smile. I wanted to cry, but my eyes were dry, like I'd spent all my tears. Lauren stood to speak, her voice soft, practiced. Nathan was my light, she said, clutching a tissue. He'd want us to move forward, to find peace. Folks nodded, some sniffing, but I saw her glance at her watch, a quick flick of her wrist, peace. She was already planning my exit. When it was over, people shuffled toward the McConnell Arts Centre for the reception, their coats rustling, voices low. Lauren made a show of helping her grandmother to the car, her arm gentle, her smile perfect. But she left me standing on the curb, the wind tugging at my wool coat, my hand still clutching the program. I watched her drive off in Nathan's Jeep, the one that still smelled of his cedar cologne, and felt a pang so deep it stole my breath. I rode with Clara, who didn't ask questions, just patted my hand and said, "You'll be all right, Diane. You're tougher than you know." The reception was a blur of casseroles and condolences. The art centre, with its exposed beams and tall windows, smelled of coffee and baked goods. Folks milled around, balancing plates of quiche and brownies, talking about Nathan like he was a story. Not my son. He was such a good coach, someone said. Always had time for everybody, said another. I nodded, my throat tight, trying to hold on to their words. Lauren floated through the crowd, glass of wine in hand, accepting hugs and murmured sympathies. She looked every inch the grieving widow, but I saw the way her eyes scanned the room, like she was tallying who mattered. I stood by the dessert table, picking at a slice of apple pie. When Mrs. Delaney approached, "How are you holding up?" "Diane," she asked, her eyes kind but tired. I forced a smile. "One day at a time," I said, because what else could I say? She nodded, then glanced at Lauren. "She's doing so well, isn't she, carrying all that grief?" I wanted to tell her the truth, that Lauren's grief was a performance, but I just said, "She's managing." Mrs. Delaney patted my arm and moved on, leaving me with a hollow ache. I thought of 1989, when Nathan and I painted the porch swing at our old house, him splashing white paint on my cheek, both of us laughing till the stars came out. "We're a team." "Mom," he'd said, and I'd believed it. That swing was gone, but this house, the one on Elm Street, was ours, bought with my savings when Nathan lost his job. I'd given up my dreams of travel, of seeing Yellowstone, because Nathan needed me. And now, Lauren wanted to erase that, to take the one place where Nathan's memory lived. As the reception wound down, I slipped outside, needing air. The November sky was grey, the sycamores bare, their branches scratching against the wind. I stood on the art centre's steps, my coat buttoned to my chin, and felt the weight of Lauren's words. 1 week. I didn't know how to fight her, not yet, but I knew I couldn't leave. This was my home, where Nathan's initials were carved in the mantel, where the roses bloomed despite the frost. I'd lost my son, but I wouldn't lose that. Clara found me, her scarf fluttering. "You okay, Diane?" she asked, her voice gruff but warm. I nodded, my throat tight, just needed a minute. She studied me, her eyes sharp. "That Lauren's got nerve, leaving you like that. Watch her, Diane. She's not what she seems." I met her gaze, a spark igniting. "I'm starting to see that," I said. Clara squeezed my arm. "You're not alone, you hear? We've got your back." Her words stayed with me as I drove home with her, the Jeep's cologne scent wrapping around me like a hug. Lauren was already at the house, her SUV in the driveway, the porch light glowing like a beacon. I didn't know what she was planning, but I felt the line she'd drawn, the battle she'd started. I wasn't ready to fight, not yet, but I was waking up, and I learned something that day. You know, grief can make you feel invisible, but memories are a place to stand, a root to hold you steady. I hope you're with me in this, feeling the weight of that day. If you are, hit that subscribe button to keep up with what's coming. It means so much to know you're there. And in the comments, tell me, what's a moment that made you feel unseen? And how did you find your way back? I read every word you share, and I'd love to hear your story. There's a kind of quiet that feels alive, like the house itself is breathing with you. And then there's the kind that chokes, heavy with things unsaid. That's how it felt coming home after Nathan's funeral, stepping into the house on Elm Street that wasn't quite mine anymore. I was 63, still raw from losing my son, still reeling from Lauren's whisper at the church. 1 week. "Diane, time to pack." I didn't know how to fight her then, but I was starting to see her for what she was, a woman who didn't just want me gone, but wanted to erase everything Nathan and I had built. Let me tell you about those first days back, because it's like sitting with you over a slice of pie, sharing a story that hurts but needs telling. It's about a house, sure, but it's also about love, and how you hold on to it when someone's trying to sweep it away. Worthington was settling into November, the kind of crisp fall where the air smells of leaves and wood smoke. Elm Street was a postcard of colonial homes and sycamores, their branches bare against a grey sky. Our house a split level from the 60s, with white siding and a stone fireplace stood halfway down, its porch light glowing like a promise. I'd loved this place since we moved in 7 years ago, when I poured my retirement savings into the down payment to help Nathan and Lauren buy it. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and coffee. The garden out back held Nathan's roses, and the oak floors creaked with stories. But that day, walking through the front door, I felt like a stranger. The house wasn't breathing anymore. It was holding its breath. I set my purse on the hall table, my fingers brushing the silver locket around my neck, the one with Nathan's baby picture. The one I'd worn since he was born. The living room was too tidy, the kind of clean that feels wrong. Nathan's old recliner, the one he'd sink into after coaching, was gone, replaced by a sleek leather chair that looked like it belonged in a showroom. The family photo on the mantel, Nathan, Lauren, and me at the Worthington Arts Festival. All smiles was missing, a blank spot where it used to be. My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was nothing, just Lauren organizing. Grief makes you doubt what you see. I wandered to the kitchen, hoping for the comfort of routine. The counter held a coffee pot, still warm, and a plate of oatmeal cookies, the kind I'd bake for Nathan when he was a boy. I reached for one, then stopped. They weren't mine. The handwriting on the tin neat. Loopy was Lauren's. I opened the fridge, and my labeled containers, the ones I'd filled with chili and casseroles, were gone, replaced by Tupperware I didn't recognize. It was small, but it stung. Like a paper cut you don't notice until it bleeds. I heard Lauren's heels before I saw her, clicking down the hall. She appeared in the doorway, her blonde bun perfect, her cream sweater crisp. "You're back," she said, her voice light but sharp, like a blade wrapped in cotton. I was just tidying up. The house needed a fresh start. I nodded, my throat tight. "Where's Nathan's recliner?" I asked, keeping my tone even. She shrugged, checking her smartwatch. It was old. "Diane, didn't fit anymore." I donated. The word hit like a slap. That chair was where Nathan read his sports magazines, where he'd nap after long days. I wanted to ask about the photo, the containers, but her eyes, green and cold, told me she'd have an answer for everything. Right, I said, turning to the sink, pretending to rinse a mug. My hand shook, but I wouldn't let her see. I thought of 1990 when Nathan lost his job and came to me, head in his hands, at our old rental. I don't know how we'll make it. Mom, he'd said, and I'd hugged him, promising we'd find a way. I cashed out part of my retirement, every penny I'd saved for a trip to Yellowstone, to help him and Lauren buy this house. Nathan had cried, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. You're a lifesaver. Mom, he'd said, this house is ours, forever, forever. I'd believed him. But now, standing in the kitchen, I felt that promise slipping. Lauren's voice cut through my thoughts. I'm heading out, she said, grabbing her keys. There's leftovers in the fridge if you're hungry. She paused, then added, I was thinking, Diane, maybe it's time to look at apartments, something closer to town, for you. I turned, meeting her gaze. This is my home, Lauren, I said, my voice low but firm. She smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Of course, just a thought. Then she was gone, her SUV pulling out of the driveway, leaving me in the silence. I wandered upstairs, needing to feel Nathan. His room was at the end of the hall, the door half open. I stepped inside, the air heavy with his absence. The bookshelf was bare, the walls stripped of his old Reds posters. I opened his closet, and my breath caught. Boxes lined the floor, labeled in Lauren's handwriting, Mom's stuff. I knelt, my knees creaking, and opened one. My quilts, the ones I'd sewn for Nathan's bed, were folded inside, along with my jewelry box and a lamp I'd kept on my nightstand. My things, packed away like I was already gone. I sat back, my heart pounding. This wasn't tidying, this was erasure. Lauren wasn't just moving me out, she was wiping out Nathan, too. I closed the box, my fingers brushing the locket, and felt a spark. The same one I'd felt when Clara looked at me at the funeral. I wasn't ready to fight, but I was starting to see the battlefield. That evening, I sat in the kitchen, the light soft through the window, the roses outside a shadow against the dusk. I sipped tea, the mug warm in my hands, and thought of 1982, when Nathan and I baked cookies in our old kitchen, him sneaking dough when he thought I wasn't looking. You're going to get a tummy ache. I'd scolded, and he'd grinned, all freckles and mischief. Worth it. Mom, that kitchen was gone, but this house was ours, and I'd fight for it, even if I didn't know how. The front door opened and Lauren's voice floated in, bright and sharp. Diane. You here, she called, like we were friends. In the kitchen, I said, setting my mug down. She appeared, holding a takeout bag from Grater's, the ice cream place Nathan loved. Thought you might want dessert, she said, setting it on the counter. I got raspberry chip, your favorite. I looked at her, searching for the catch. Thanks, I said, but I didn't touch the bag. She leaned against the counter, her watch glinting. I was organizing upstairs, she said, casual as if we were chatting about the weather. Found some of your things. I boxed them up so nothing gets lost. I held her gaze, my voice steady. You didn't need to do that. Lauren, my things are fine where they are. Her smile tightened. Just for a second. Just helping out. You've got enough on your plate. She paused, then added, I can call a moving company if you're ready. There's a nice place by the library. Perfect for you. I stood, my chair scraping softly. I'm not moving. Lauren, I said, each word deliberate. This is my home. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. It was Nathan's home. Diane. He'd want us to have space to grieve. Then she turned, grabbing her phone, like I wasn't even there. I watched her go, my heart racing but my resolve growing. She thought she could push me out, box by box, smile by smile, but she didn't know me, not really. I was a mother who'd given everything for her son, a teacher who'd faced down rowdy classrooms with nothing but a chalkboard and grit. I wasn't leaving. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Lauren humming in the kitchen, some pop song I didn't know. I pulled on my cardigan, the letter from Nathan still in my pocket, and went downstairs. She was at the counter, pouring almond milk into a mug, her phone buzzing with texts. "Morning," she said, not looking up. "I'm getting quotes for movers, just to have options." I opened the fridge. My labeled containers still gone. I didn't ask for movers. I said, grabbing a yogurt I didn't want. She smiled, sipping her coffee. "Right, but you said you'd handle things on your terms. I'm just helping." Her fingers tapped her phone. Quick and sure, I turned, my eyes catching the blank spot on the mantel where Nathan's photo used to be. "Where's the family picture?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. She shrugged, not looking up. It didn't match the room anymore. I put it away, like Nathan was something to store, like our life here was disposable. I thought of 1995 when Nathan and I signed the deed for this house, laughing in the lawyer's office about our forever home. He'd hugged me, his arms strong, promising I'd always have a place. That promise was why I'd stayed, why I'd given up my savings, my dreams. And now, Lauren was unraveling it. Piece by piece, I went outside, needing air. The garden was quiet, the roses dormant, their buds tight against the cold. I knelt, my fingers brushing the soil, and felt Nathan there, his hands next to mine, planting those first bushes. "We're a team, Mom," he'd said, and I'd believed it. I still did. I stood, my knees aching, and looked at the house, its windows glowing in the morning light. This was my home, my root, and I'd fight for it, quiet as a whisper, fierce as a storm. I learned something those days. You know, a house isn't just walls, it's the love you pour into it, the memories that hold it up. Lauren could move my things, but she couldn't take that. I was starting to see her game, and I wasn't playing by her rules anymore. If this story's pulling at your heart, I hope you'll stay with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're listening. And in the comments, tell me what's a place that holds your memories, and what would you do to protect it? I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story. You ever feel a moment where the fog lifts, and you see things clear as day? That's what happened a few days after Nathan's funeral, when I started to understand what Lauren was really after. I was 63, still carrying the ache of losing my son, still hearing her whisper from the church one week, "Diane, time to pack." But something was stirring in me, like a seed cracking open in spring soil. I wasn't ready to fight, not full out, but I was waking up, seeing the game she was playing with our house on Elm Street. Let me share this part with you, like we're sitting in my kitchen, the coffee pot hissing, the roses outside blooming despite the frost. It's a story about finding your footing when the ground's slipping, about holding on to love when someone's trying to steal it away. Worthington was deep in November, the kind of cold that nips your fingers but makes the sky so blue it hurts to look at. Elm Street was quiet, the sycamores shedding their last leaves, piling up like memories on the sidewalk. Our house, a 60s split level with white siding and a stone fireplace, stood steady. But inside, it felt like a battlefield. I'd given my retirement savings to help Nathan and Lauren buy this place 7 years ago, and every creak of the oak floors, every glow of the porch light, held a piece of us. But Lauren was dismantling it, box by box, smile by smile. and I was starting to see her for what she was. It started with a missing paper. I'd been tidying my room, a small space off the hall with a quilted bedspread and a nightstand where I kept my locket, the silver one with Nathan's baby picture. I was looking for my copy of the house deed, the one Nathan and I signed when we bought this place. It was supposed to be in a fireproof box under my bed, along with my passport and old tax returns. I checked it last year, just to be sure, but now the box was there, and the deed was gone. My heart skipped. Not from panic, but from a dawning truth. Lauren had been organizing, she said, moving my things, packing Nathan's. Had she taken it, I sat on the bed, my fingers brushing the locket, and thought of 2000 when Nathan came to me, his face pale after losing his coaching job. "We're drowning, Mom," he'd said, and I'd hugged him, promising we'd make it work. I cashed out my retirement, every penny I'd saved for a trip to the Pacific Northwest, to help him and Lauren with the down payment. Nathan had cried, his arms tight around me. "This house is ours. Mom," he'd said, "you'll always have a place here." I'd kept the cashier's check receipt, a faded slip from the bank, as proof of my contribution. It was in that fireproof box, and I needed to find it. I went downstairs, the house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Lauren was out, her SUV gone from the driveway. The kitchen smelled of coffee and quiche, a faint comfort, but the blank spot on the mantel where Nathan's photo used to be stung like a fresh cut. I opened the hall closet, where Lauren had stashed some boxes, and found one labeled paperwork. My hands shook as I sifted through it. Old bills, warranties, nothing important. But at the bottom, tucked in a manila envelope, was the receipt. The bank stamp clear $50,000, my life savings, paid to the mortgage company in 2000. I held it like it was gold, my breath steadying. This was proof, something Lauren couldn't erase. The doorbell rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. I slipped the receipt into my cardigan pocket and opened the door to find Clara Thompson, my neighbor, holding a loaf of zucchini bread wrapped in foil. Clara was 70 with a sharp wit and eyes that missed nothing. She'd lived next door forever, cheering at Nathan's Little League games, bringing over gossip from the knitting circle at the Griswold Center. "Thought you could use some comfort food," she said, her voice gruff but warm. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Coffee's on." We sat at the kitchen table, the sunlight slanting through the window, catching the dust motes in the air. Clara unwrapped the bread, the smell of cinnamon filling the room. "How you holding up, Diane?" she asked, cutting a slice. I sighed, my fingers tracing the mug's handle. "It's hard. Clara, Lauren's, moving things, my things, Nathan's things." Clara's lips pursed, like she'd tasted something sour. I saw her tossing stuff in the donation bin out front. Nathan's old trophies, his Reds cap, broke my heart. I froze, the receipt burning in my pocket. "She didn't tell me," I said, my voice low. Clara leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "That girl's slicker than a used car salesman." "Diane, I don't trust her. Nobody throws out a man's life like that unless they're hiding something." I nodded, the spark from the funeral flaring brighter. "I'm starting to see it." I said, "She's after the house. Clara told me I've got a week to pack." Clara's jaw dropped, then hardened, the nerve of her. "This is your home. Diane, you paid for it, didn't you?" "Half of it," I said, patting my pocket. "I've got proof." "Good," she said, slicing another piece of bread. "You hold on to that and watch your back. Lauren's not grieving, she's scheming." We sipped our coffee, the silence between us warm, like a quilt. Clara's words stayed with me, a reminder I wasn't alone. I thought of 1987 when Nathan and I sat in the backyard of our old rental, him helping me prune the roses. "You're tough, Mom." he'd said, grinning as I wrestled a thorny branch. Like these roses, you don't give up. Those roses were still here, in the garden out back. And so was I. I wasn't giving up either. After Clara left, I went to my room, the receipt still in my pocket. I opened the fireproof box again, double-checking, hoping the deed had magically appeared. It hadn't. But the receipt was enough for now. I needed to talk to someone who knew the law, someone who could tell me my rights. Nathan had mentioned a lawyer once, Daniel Carter, a guy who'd coached him in Little League and now had an office in Columbus. I found his number in an old address book, my hand steady as I dialed. The secretary said he could see me next week. It wasn't soon, but it was a start. Lauren came home that afternoon, her SUV crunching gravel in the driveway. I was in the living room, knitting a scarf for the church bazaar. The click of needles a small comfort. She breezed in, carrying a bag from the refectory, the fancy restaurant in Columbus. "Hey, Diane," she said, her voice bright, like we were roommates. "I got us dinner. Figured you'd want a break from cooking." I looked up, my needles pausing. "That's kind of you," I said, watching her set the bag on the counter. Her smartwatch glinted, always ticking, always counting something. She leaned against the counter, her green eyes scanning me. "I was thinking," she said, casual as if we were chatting about the weather. "There's a moving company in town. I can call them, get a quote. Make things easier for you." I set my knitting down, my voice calm but firm. "I'm not moving. Lauren, I told you that." Her smile tightened. "Just for a second. I know, but it's a lot. Diane. This house, the memories. Maybe a fresh start would help." I held her gaze, the receipt a quiet weight in my pocket. "This is my fresh start," I said. "Right here." She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing, but she didn't push. "Suit yourself," she said, grabbing her phone and heading upstairs. I listened to her footsteps, light but deliberate, and felt a shift. She was testing me, probing for weakness. But I wasn't the same woman I'd been at the funeral. I was waking up. That night, I sat in the garden, the air cool, the roses a shadow against the dusk. The porch light cast a soft glow, like a beacon in the dark. I thought of 1992 when Nathan and I watched an Ohio State game in this living room, him cheering so loud the neighbors banged on the wall. Buckeyes forever. Mom, he'd shouted, and I'd laughed, tossing popcorn at him. That joy was still here, in the walls, in the soil. Lauren could move my things, but she couldn't take that. I went inside. The house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Lauren's door was closed, a faint light seeping under it. I paused, my hand on the locket, and felt Nathan with me. His voice in my head, "You're tough, Mom." I was done letting Lauren call the shots. I'd call Daniel Carter, find that deed, and hold on to this house, not just for me, but for Nathan, for the love we'd poured into every corner. I learned something those days. You know, sometimes the fight starts small, with a piece of paper, a neighbor's words, a memory that won't let go. It's not about being loud, it's about being steady, like a rose pushing through frost. I was finding my strength, and Lauren didn't see it coming. If this story's stirring something in you, I hope you'll stay with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're out there. And in the comments, tell me what's a moment that woke you up, made you see things clear. I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story. You know how some folks can smile so sweet you almost believe they mean it. Even when your gut's screaming otherwise. That's Lauren, through and through. About a week after I found that cashier's check receipt, she threw what she called a grief gathering for Nathan, and I saw her for what she really was, a woman weaving a web, not just to push me out of our house on Elm Street, but to rewrite Nathan's story altogether. I was 63, still carrying the weight of losing my son, still holding on to his letter and the spark it lit in me. I wasn't fighting yet, not out loud, but I was watching, learning her game. Let me tell you about that night. Like we're sitting on my porch swing, the air cool with November, sharing a story that's hard but true. It's about seeing through lies, about holding tight to love when someone's trying to unravel it. Worthington was settling into late fall, the kind where the air bites just enough to make you pull your scarf tight. Elm Street glowed under streetlights, the sycamores bare, their shadows stretching long across the lawns. Our house, a 60s split level, with white siding and a stone fireplace, stood quiet. But inside, it was a stage for Lauren's performance. I'd given my retirement savings to help Nathan and her buy this place, and every creak of the oak floors, every rose in the backyard garden, held a piece of us. But Lauren was chipping away at it, moving my things, erasing Nathan's, and now, with this gathering, she was playing the grieving widow for all of Worthington to see. It started that morning, when I found Lauren in the kitchen, arranging wine glasses on a tray. The counter was a spread of fancy mini quiches, imported crackers, a cheese board that looked straight out of a magazine. The kitchen smelled of rosemary and Merlot, not the cinnamon and coffee I loved. I stood in the doorway, my cardigan loose around me, my silver locket, the one with Nathan's baby picture, warm against my chest. "What's all this?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Lauren looked up, her blonde bun sleek, her green eyes bright. "Just a little gathering," she said, her tone light, like we were planning a picnic. For Nathan's friends, co-workers, a chance to remember him. I nodded, but my gut twisted. Remember him. She'd donated his recliner, packed his trophies, taken down our family photo. This wasn't about Nathan, it was about her. "Sounds nice," I said, grabbing a mug for coffee. "Need help?" She smiled, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Oh, Diane, you're sweet, but I've got it. Why don't you rest? It's been a lot." Her smartwatch glinted, always ticking, always counting something: time, plans, lies. I sipped my coffee, watching her arrange napkins with precision. "I'll be around," I said, and she nodded, already turning back to her tray. I went to the living room, where the new leather chair sat, cold and out of place. The blank spot on the mantel where Nathan's photo used to be stared back at me. I thought of 1982, when Nathan and I sat in our old rental's kitchen, him sneaking cookie dough, me pretending not to notice. Worth it. "Mom." He'd grinned, and I'd laughed, ruffling his hair. That joy was still here, in the walls, but Lauren was trying to paint over it. By 6, the house was buzzing. Cars lined Elm Street, and folks streamed in neighbors. Nathan's old teammates, even some of Lauren's Pilates friends from Columbus. The living room glowed with candles, their light flickering off the oak floors. I stood near the back wall, my scarf loose around my shoulders, feeling like a guest in my own home. Lauren floated through the crowd, glass in hand, her black sweater dress elegant, her tears perfectly timed. Nathan was my everything. She said to a group, her voice soft, breaking just so. Folks nodded, offering hugs, and I wanted to scream. She wasn't grieving, she was performing. Kyle Brennan, Nathan's old teammate who ran a gym downtown, caught my eye. He was broad-shouldered, his face lined with grief. He crossed the room, pulling me into a hug. "Nathan talked about you all the time," he whispered. "Said you were his rock." My throat tightened, and I nodded, unable to speak. Kyle's words were a lifeline, a reminder that Nathan's love hadn't faded, no matter what Lauren did. I watched her work the room, her smile shifting from mournful to charming as she greeted each guest. She'd set up Nathan's old bar cart, stocked with craft beer from North High Brewing and wine I knew cost more than my grocery budget. It was a show, every bit of it, and Worthington was eating it up. Mrs. Delaney, from the farmer's market, patted Lauren's arm. "You're so brave," she said, and Lauren dabbed her eyes. Thanking her. I stood there, my coffee cold, and felt invisible, like I was the shadow of Nathan's life, not its heart. I slipped into the hallway, needing a moment. The air was cooler here, the hum of voices muffled. I leaned against the wall, my fingers brushing the locket, and thought of 1990 when Nathan and I signed the deed for this house. We'd laughed in the lawyer's office, him teasing me about my fancy signature. "This is our forever home. Mom," he'd said, and I'd believed it. That deed, with both our names, was somewhere in this house, and I'd find it. Lauren could play her games, but she couldn't rewrite the truth. I was about to head back when I heard Lauren's voice, low and sharp, from the den. The door was cracked, and she was on the phone, her back to me. "Yeah, it's going well," she said, her tone businesslike, not a trace of grief. "The house will be ready to list soon. I've got a buyer lined up in Columbus." My heart stopped, the words slicing through me. List the house. She wasn't just pushing me out, she was selling Nathan's home. Our home. Like it was nothing. I pressed closer, my breath shallow. "No, she doesn't suspect anything," Lauren continued, her voice dropping. "I'll have her out in a week. Tops. It's handled." She laughed, a cold, clip sound, and hung up. I stepped back, my hands trembling, the receipt in my pocket suddenly heavier. Selling the house. That's why she'd moved my things, erased Nathan's. It wasn't grief, it was greed. I slipped back to the living room, my heart racing but my face calm. Lauren emerged from the den, her smile back in place, and joined a group by the bar cart. I watched her, seeing every move for what it was, a performance to cement her story as the grieving widow, to make my exit look natural. Someone asked me how I was holding up, and I forced a smile. "As well as I can," I said, then added, "This is still my home, you know, Nathan and I bought it together." The woman blinked, confused. "Oh, I thought Lauren said..." She trailed off, glancing at Lauren, who was watching me now, her eyes narrowing. I held her gaze, my locket warm against my chest, and felt a shift. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was here, and I was seeing her. The gathering wound down, folks drifting out with murmured goodbyes. Kyle hugged me again, promising to check in. Clara Thompson, my neighbor, caught me by the door. "You okay?" "Diane," she asked, her eyes sharp. I nodded, my voice low. "Lauren's planning something." "Clara." I heard her, "She wants to sell the house." Clara's jaw tightened. "That girl's got no soul. You need anything, you call me." "Here I will," I said, squeezing her hand. Her support. Kyle's words. The receipt in my pocket. They were anchors, holding me steady after everyone left. I sat in the kitchen. The candles burned low. The house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Lauren was upstairs, her door closed, probably texting her buyer. I sipped tea, the mug warm in my hands, and thought of 1985 when Nathan and I planted roses in the backyard. "They'll live forever, right?" "Mom?" he'd asked, his freckled face bright. Those roses were still there, tough as ever. And so was I. Lauren thought she had me cornered, but she didn't know the strength of a mother's love, the kind that fights quiet but fierce. I went to my room, the receipt safe in my nightstand, and pulled out Nathan's letter, the one I'd found days ago. "Don't let her take everything," he'd written, and I wouldn't. I'd called Daniel Carter, the lawyer, and had an appointment next week. I'd find that deed, prove my place here. Lauren's scheme was clear now, but so was my path. I wasn't just fighting for a house, I was fighting for Nathan, for the life we'd built. For me. I learned something that night. Lies can look pretty, all dressed up in candles and wine, but they crumble when you shine a light on them. I was starting to shine mine, and Lauren didn't see it coming. If this story's tugging at your heart, I hope you'll stay with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're out there, and in the comments. Tell me, what's a time you saw through someone's mask? And how did you hold your ground? I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story. You ever have a moment where you realize you're not just surviving, but fighting back? That's what it felt like about 10 days after Nathan's funeral. When I found the one piece of paper that could stop Lauren in her tracks. I was 63, still carrying the ache of losing my son, still burning from her whispered threat at the church and the phone call I'd overheard at her so-called grief gathering. She wanted to sell our house on Elm Street, erase Nathan's memory, and push me out like I was nothing. But I was done being invisible. I was finding my strength, piece by piece, and it started with a dusty box in the attic. Let me share this part with you. Like we're sitting in my kitchen, the coffee pot humming, the November light soft through the window. It's a story about digging deep, about holding on to truth when someone's trying to bury it. Worthington was wrapped in late fall, the kind of cold that makes you crave a warm mug and a fire. Elm Street was quiet, the sycamores bare, their branches scratching the sky like old promises. Our house, a 60s split level with white siding and a stone fireplace, stood steady. But inside, it was a chessboard. I'd given my retirement savings to help Nathan and Lauren buy this place. And every creak of the oak floors, every rose in the backyard, held a piece of us. Lauren had been chipping away at it, moving my quilts, tossing Nathan's trophies, planning to sell it all, but I'd found the cashier's check receipt, proof of my contribution. And now I needed the deed, the one with my name next to Nathan's. It started that morning, after a restless night. I'd been dreaming of Nathan, his voice clear as day. "You're tough, Mom, like those roses." I woke with his letter in my hand, the one I'd found in his dresser, urging me not to let Lauren take everything. It was crumpled now, from all the times I'd held it, but it was my anchor. I pulled on my cardigan, the receipt tucked in my pocket, and headed to the kitchen. The house was quiet. Lauren out somewhere, probably meeting her buyer. I thought bitterly. The kitchen smelled of coffee and quiche, a faint comfort, but the blank spot on the mantel where Nathan's photo used to be was a constant jab. I'd called Daniel Carter, the lawyer Nathan once mentioned, and had an appointment tomorrow. He'd said the receipt was a start, but the deed would seal it proof I was a co-owner, not a guest. I'd checked my fireproof box, the hall closet, even Nathan's room, but it was gone. Lauren had been organizing, she said, and I didn't trust her one bit. The attic was my last hope, a dusty space full of boxes from before Lauren came into our lives. I grabbed a flashlight and climbed the pull-down ladder, my knees creaking, my heart pounding like I was on a treasure hunt. The attic smelled of old paper and cedar, the air thick with dust that danced in the beam of my flashlight. Boxes were stacked against the walls, labeled in Nathan's sloppy handwriting school stuff. Taxes, memories. I knelt, my fingers brushing the locket around my neck, the one with Nathan's baby picture, and started searching. I thought of 1990 when Nathan and I signed the deed in Daniel Carter's office, him teasing me about my fancy signature. "This is our forever home. Mom," he'd said, his grin wide as the Ohio sky. We'd laughed, splitting a Grater's ice cream after, raspberry chip dripping on our hands. That deed was here, I knew it, and I wasn't leaving without it. I opened box after box old report cards, Nathan's Little League trophies, a photo of us at an Ohio State game, him in a Buckeyes cap, me cheering. Each fine was a stab of grief, but also a spark, reminding me why I was fighting. Finally, I found a box labeled Home Purchase, buried under a pile of tax returns. My breath caught as I pulled it out. The cardboard soft with age. Inside were closing statements, insurance papers, and then, in a manila envelope marked Final Deed. There it was, the original document. My signature next to Nathan's, notarized, filed, dated 2000. I held it to my chest, tears blurring my eyes. I found it. Nathan, I whispered, my voice breaking. We're okay now. I sat there, the flashlight casting shadows, and felt him with me, his hand on my shoulder, like when he was a boy. The deed was more than paper, it was our promise. Our home, our love. Lauren could scheme all she wanted, but she couldn't touch this. I tucked the deed into my cardigan, climbed down, and hid it in my nightstand, under a stack of old letters. I wasn't taking chances. Lauren came home that afternoon, her SUV crunching gravel in the driveway. I was in the living room, knitting a scarf for the church bazaar. The click of needles a steady rhythm. She breezed in, carrying a bag from the Worthington Farmers Market, her blonde bun sleek, her green eyes scanning me. Hey, Diane, she said, her voice bright, like we were friends. I got some cider, thought it'd be nice for tonight. Thanks, I said, not looking up, my needles moving faster. Her kindness was a trap, always was, but I wasn't falling for it. She leaned against the counter, her smartwatch glinting. You okay? She asked, her tone soft, like she cared. You've been quiet. I don't want you stressing yourself. I met her gaze, my voice calm but firm. Just looking through some old things. I said, paperwork, nothing important. Her smile flickered, just for a second, and I saw it worry, sharp and quick. Oh, she said, recovering fast. Well, let me know if you need help. I've been organizing, so things might be moved around. I'll manage, I said, my needles clicking. She nodded, grabbing her phone and headed upstairs, her footsteps light but deliberate. I exhaled, my heart racing. She didn't know about the deed, but she sensed something, and I'd use that. I wasn't just defending my home, I was playing her game, and I was learning the rules. That evening, I called Daniel Carter's office, leaving a message with his secretary. Tell him I found the deed. I said, my voice steady, I'll bring it tomorrow. I hung up, feeling a weight lift, like I'd taken a step toward solid ground. The house was quiet, the porch light glowing through the window, casting a soft circle on the garden. I thought of 1988 when Nathan and I sat on the porch swing of our old rental, him telling me about his first crush, me laughing till my sides hurt. You're my best friend. Mom, he'd said, and I'd hugged him, promising I'd always be there. I was keeping that promise now. For him. For us. I went to the garden, the air cool, the roses dormant but alive, their buds tight against the frost. I knelt, my fingers brushing the soil, and felt Nathan's hands next to mine, planting those first bushes. We're a team, Mom, he'd said, and I still believed it. Lauren thought she had the upper hand, but she didn't know the strength of a mother's love, the kind that fights quiet but fierce. I stood, my knees aching, and looked at the house, its windows warm in the dusk. This was my place, my route, and I'd hold it. The next morning, I woke early. The house still. Lauren was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, her phone buzzing with texts. Morning, she said, not looking up. You're up early, got things to do, I said, grabbing a yogurt from the fridge. My containers were still gone, replaced by her Tupperware, but it didn't sting anymore. I had the deed, the receipt, Nathan's letter. I was ready. She glanced at me, her eyes narrowing. Everything okay? She asked, her tone too sweet. Everything's fine, I said, smiling just enough to keep her guessing, just sorting out some paperwork. Her fingers paused on her mug, but she recovered, sipping her coffee. "Good," she said. "Let me know if you need help." She turned back to her phone, but I saw the tension in her shoulders. She was worried, and I was glad. I left the kitchen, the deed hidden in my purse, and felt a new kind of strength. Not loud, but steady, like a river carving stone. I'd see Daniel Carter today, lay out my case, and start building my defense. Lauren's scheme was unraveling, and I was the one pulling the thread. I thought of 1992, when Nathan and I watched an Ohio State game, him cheering so loud the neighbors complained. "Buckeyes forever." Mom, he'd shouted, and I'd toss popcorn at him, laughing. That joy was still here, in the walls, in the roses, and I'd protect it. I learned something those days, you know. Truth is like a seed, it starts small, buried deep, but it grows if you nurture it. I was nurturing mine, and Lauren didn't see the roots spreading. If this story's pulling you in, I hope you'll stick with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're there. And in the comments, tell me what's a time you found something that gave you strength, something you didn't expect. I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story. You ever hear a lie so bold it stops you cold? Like a winter wind stealing your breath. That's what happened about 2 weeks after Nathan's funeral, when Lauren dropped a bombshell that turned my grief into something sharper, something fierce. I was 63, still holding tight to the deed I'd found in the attic, still burning from her plan to sell our house on Elm Street. I'd been waking up, finding my strength. But this was a new kind of low. She thought she could play me, but I was seeing through her now, clear as the November sky over Worthington. Let me tell you about that day. Like we're sitting by my fireplace, the coffee warm, the roses outside stubborn against the frost. It's a story about truth cutting through deceit, about a mother's love that won't be broken. Worthington was deep in late fall, the air crisp, the sycamores on Elm Street bare, their shadows long across the lawns. Our house, a 60s split level with white siding and a stone fireplace, stood steady. But inside, it was a battleground. I'd given my retirement savings to help Nathan and Lauren buy this place, and every creak of the oak floors, every bud in the backyard rose garden, held a piece of us. Lauren had been erasing it, moving my things, tossing Nathan's, scheming to sell, but I had the cashier's check receipt, the deed with my name, and Nathan's letter urging me not to let her take everything. I'd met with Daniel Carter, my lawyer, who said we had a case, and I was ready to fight, quiet but sure. It started that morning, a Tuesday, when I came downstairs to find Lauren in the kitchen, standing by the sink in her robe, holding a crumpled tissue. The room smelled of coffee and toast, the sunlight slanting through the window, catching the dust motes in the air. I paused, my cardigan loose around me, my silver locket, the one with Nathan's baby picture, warm against my chest. Lauren's eyes were red, her face soft, like she'd been crying. It was so unlike her usual polish that I stopped. Unsure. "You okay?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She turned, wiping her eyes with the edge of her palm, and forced a smile. "I'm sorry. Diane," she said, her voice breaking just so. "It just hits me sometimes. You know." Then she placed a hand on her belly, subtle but deliberate, and my heart froze. "I didn't want to say anything until I was sure," she said softly. "I'm pregnant." For a full 5 seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Pregnant Nathan had been gone 10 weeks, his heart attack sudden, final. The math didn't add up, and neither did the look in her eyes. Grief, yes, but something else, something calculated. I stared at her, my fingers brushing the locket, and felt a storm rising in my chest. "How far along?" I asked, my voice calm. though my pulse was racing. 8 weeks, maybe 9, she said. Too quick, her hand still on her belly. She reached for a photo on the table, an ultrasound image, and slid it toward me. I used a donor, she added. Her voice steady now. Nathan and I talked about it, just in case. He wanted me to have a piece of him. I picked up the photo, turning it slowly, my eyes scanning the details. Her name was printed in the corner, along with a clinic in Columbus, and a date 4 weeks ago, not 10. My heart pounded, but I kept my face blank, handing it back. That's something, I said, my voice even. Congratulations. Her face softened, like she thought I'd bought it. I hope you understand why I need stability now, she said, her tone earnest, for the baby's sake. I nodded, slow and deliberate. It changes things, I said, letting her think I was folding. But inside, I was raging. A donor. Nathan would have told me something that big. He told me everything. From his first coaching job to his fears about Lauren's control. This wasn't his plan. It was hers, a lie to paint me as the heartless mother-in-law, to make my staying here seem cruel. I saw it clear as day she'd used this in court. A pregnant widow against an unstable old woman. But she'd slipped, and I'd caught it. I thought of 1987 when I was pregnant with Nathan, sitting in our old rental's kitchen, my hands on my belly, feeling him kick. It was sacred, that bond, a love so deep it changed me forever. Lauren's lie mocked that, turned it into a weapon. I wanted to call her out, but I held back. Knowing I needed proof, the ultrasound date was a start, and I'd find more. That afternoon, Lauren went out, her SUV pulling away with a crunch of gravel. I waited until I heard the engine fade, then slipped into the den, where she kept her tote bag. It was reckless, but I was past caring. The bag was open, papers spilling out, and there, in a folder marked personal, was another copy of the ultrasound, along with a receipt from the clinic dated the same week. 4 weeks, not 8. I snapped a photo with my phone, my hand steady, and slipped the papers back. My heart raced, but I felt alive, like I was finally playing her game and winning. I called Daniel Carter's office, leaving a message with his secretary. I've got something new, I said, my voice low. Lauren's claiming she's pregnant, but the dates don't match. I have proof. I hung up. The deed and receipt safe in my nightstand. Nathan's letter in my pocket. Daniel had said the deed was our strongest card, but this lie, it could tip the scales, show Lauren's deceit for what it was. Lauren came home that evening, her heels clicking as she breezed into the kitchen. I was at the table, knitting a scarf for the church bazaar, the needles clicking like a metronome. Hey, Diane, she said, her voice bright, like nothing had happened. I was thinking we could talk about the house, with the baby coming. We'll need more space. I looked up, my needles pausing. Space is important, I said, my tone neutral. But this house has plenty. It's been home for years. Her smile tightened. Just for a second. Sure, but things change, she said, grabbing a glass for water. Nathan would have wanted what's best for his family. I held her gaze, my voice soft but firm. Nathan wanted this house to stay ours. I said, you know that. She froze, her hand on the faucet, then recovered, forcing a laugh. You're so sentimental. Diane, it's sweet. She turned away, but I saw the flicker in her eyes worry, maybe fear. I'd rattled her, and it felt good. That night, I sat in the garden, the air cool, the roses a shadow against the dusk. The porch light cast a soft glow, like a beacon in the dark. I thought of 1998 when Nathan gave me the locket for my birthday, his grin wide as he clasped it around my neck. So, you'll always have me close. Mom, he'd said. And I'd hugged him, tears in my eyes. That locket was still here, and so was I, holding on to his love, his truth. Lauren's lie was a desperate move, but it had backfired. I had the ultrasound photo, the receipt, the deed, and Nathan's letter. I was building a case, and she didn't see it coming. I went inside. The house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Lauren's door was closed, a faint light seeping under it. I paused, my hand on the locket, and felt Nathan with me, his voice in my head. "You're tough, Mom." I'd see Daniel tomorrow, lay out the evidence, and keep moving forward. Lauren thought she could manipulate me, but she'd underestimated a mother's love, the kind that fights quiet but fierce. I learned something that day. Lies can look convincing, dressed up in tears and photos, but they crumble when you hold them to the light. I was holding mine now, and the truth was brighter than Lauren's schemes. If this story's pulling you in, I hope you'll stick with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're out there. And in the comments, tell me what's a time someone tried to fool you, and how did you see through it? I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story. You ever feel like you're playing a game where the other person doesn't know you've learnt the rules? That's how it felt about 2 weeks after Lauren's fake pregnancy bombshell. When I started pushing back, not with shouts but with quiet moves that made her squirm. I was 63, still carrying the weight of Nathan's loss, still holding tight to the deed, the receipt, and the ultrasound proof I'd found. Lauren thought she could bully me out of our house on Elm Street, but I was awake now, seeing her lies for what they were. Let me tell you about those days, like we're sitting on my porch swing, the November air cool, the coffee warm in our hands. It's a story about standing your ground, about a mother's love that bends but never breaks. Worthington was settling into the tail end of fall, the kind where the air smells of wood smoke and the last leaves cling to the sycamores on Elm Street. Our house, a 60s split level with white siding and a stone fireplace, stood steady. But inside, it was a chess match. I'd given my retirement savings to help Nathan and Lauren buy this place, and every creak of the oak floors, every rose in the backyard garden, held a piece of us. Lauren was unraveling it, moving my things, faking a pregnancy, planning to sell, but I had the deed, the cashier's check receipt, Nathan's letter, and proof her ultrasound was a lie. I'd shared it all with Daniel Carter, my lawyer, who said we had a strong case. Now, I was playing smart, baiting Lauren to show her hand. It started that morning, a chilly Wednesday, when I found Lauren in the kitchen, sipping coffee at the counter. The room smelled of toast and cinnamon, the sunlight soft through the window, catching the steam from her mug. She was in yoga pants and a sweater, her blonde bun loose, but her green eyes were sharp, watching me as I grabbed a yogurt from the fridge. My locket, the silver one with Nathan's baby picture, felt warm against my chest, a reminder of why I was here. I'd been dropping hints about paperwork to rattle her, and I could tell it was working. "Morning, Diane," she said, her voice bright, like we were old friends. "You're up early." "Got things to sort," I said, leaning against the counter, my tone casual. "Found some old paperwork the other day. House stuff, you know." Her fingers paused on her mug, just for a second, before she smiled. "Oh," like what she asked, her voice too sweet, her smartwatch glinting as she adjusted it. "Just records," I said, shrugging. "Things Nathan and I kept track of. Makes you think about what really matters." Her smile tightened, and I saw it worry, quick and sharp, before she covered it with a laugh. "You're so nostalgic," she said, sipping her coffee. "I've been organizing, so let me know if you need help finding anything." "I'll manage," I said, holding her gaze. "I know where everything belongs." She nodded, her eyes narrowing. and turned back to her phone, but I caught the tension in her shoulders. I'd rattled her, and it felt like a small victory, like planting a seed you know will grow. I thought of 1992, when Nathan and I watched an Ohio State game in this living room. Him cheering so loud the neighbors banged on the wall. Buckeyes forever. Mom, he'd shouted, tossing popcorn at me. That joy was still here, in the walls, and I'd protect it, quiet but fierce. Later that day, I noticed something new. My nightstand drawer, where I kept the deed and receipt, had a lock on it, one that hadn't been there before. My stomach twisted, but I didn't panic. I grabbed a flathead screwdriver from the garage and pried it open, careful not to leave marks. Inside, my prescription bottle and a small cash envelope were gone, but the deed and receipt were safe. Lauren was sending a message she wanted me to feel watched, unsafe. EVA'S. I replaced the lock, my hand steady, and backed up photos of the documents to my cloud, just in case. She was escalating, but so was I. That afternoon, Clara Thompson, my neighbor, stopped by with a batch of pumpkin muffins, her scarf fluttering in the wind. We sat in the kitchen, the muffins warm on the table, the air smelling of nutmeg and coffee. Heard something at the knitting circle. Clara said, her eyes sharp. Lauren's been talking, saying you're not yourself, that you're confused about the house. I froze, the muffin halfway to my mouth. Confused, I said, my voice low. She's spreading rumors. Clara nodded, slicing a muffin. Told Mrs. Delaney you're having trouble coping, that you might need help. Folks are starting to whisper. I leaned back, my locket heavy. Lauren wasn't just pushing me out, she was painting me as unstable, laying the groundwork for her pregnant widow story. It stung, but it also lit a fire. She's building a case, I said, more to myself than Clara, to make me look crazy. Clara's jaw tightened. She's got nerve, I'll give her that, but you're tougher. Diane, always have been. I smiled, her words a balm. Thanks, Clara. I'm not going down without a fight. She squeezed my hand, her grip firm. You need me. I'm here. Whole knitting circle's got your back. After Clara left, I sat in the living room, knitting a scarf for the church bazaar, the needles clicking like a heartbeat. I thought of 1989, when Nathan and I painted the porch swing at our old rental, him splashing paint on my cheek, both of us laughing till the stars came out. We're a team, Mom, he'd said, and I'd believed it. That team was still alive, in me, in this house. Lauren could spread her lies, but she couldn't touch that. That evening, Kyle Brennan, Nathan's old teammate, called. I was in the den, sorting through old photos, when my phone buzzed. Diane, it's Kyle, he said, his voice heavy. I got something you should see. Nathan sent me a text a month before he passed. He was worried about Lauren, said she was pushing to refinance the house, maybe sell it. My heart skipped. Nathan's letter flashing in my mind. Can you send it, I asked, my voice steady despite the pulse in my throat. Already did, he said. I'm sorry I didn't say sooner, didn't know it mattered till now. I opened the text, my hands trembling. There it was, Nathan's words. Lauren's obsessed with the house, keeps talking about selling. I don't trust her. Man, I saved the screenshot, my breath shallow. This was gold, another piece to show Lauren's intent. Thank you, Kyle, I said, my voice thick. This means everything. Anything for Nathan, he said. And for you. I hung up. The house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Lauren's SUV pulled into the driveway, her headlights slicing through the dusk. I slipped the phone into my pocket and went to the kitchen, pretending to rinse a mug. She came in, her heels clicking, a bag from the refectory in hand. Hey, Diane, she said, her voice bright. Got us some dinner. Salmon, your favorite. Thanks, I said. drying my hands, my tone neutral. She was playing nice, but I saw the edge in her eyes, the way she watched me. "You seem busy," she said, setting the bag down. "Everything okay?" I smiled, just enough to keep her guessing. "Just sorting through some things," I said. "Old messages, paperwork. You know how it is." Her smile faltered, and I saw it fear, raw and quick, before she covered it with a laugh. "You're so thorough," she said, grabbing a glass for water. "Let me know if you need help." "I've got it," I said, holding her gaze. She nodded, her fingers tight on the glass, and headed upstairs. I exhaled, my heart racing but my resolve solid. I'd baited her, and she was slipping, showing her hand. That night, I sat in the garden, the air cool, the roses a shadow against the dusk. The porch light glowed, a beacon in the dark. I thought of 1995 when Nathan and I signed the deed, him teasing me about my fancy signature. "This is our forever home, Mom," he'd said, and we'd split a Grater's ice cream, raspberry chip dripping on our hands. That home was still here, and I'd fight for it, quiet as a whisper, fierce as a storm. I went inside, the deed, receipt, an ultrasound photo safe in my nightstand, Nathan's letter in my pocket, Kyle's text backed up on my phone. I'd see Daniel Carter tomorrow, add this to our case. Lauren thought she was winning, but she didn't know the strength of a mother's love, the kind that fights without breaking. I learned something those days. You know, sometimes. The best fight is the one you wage in silence, letting your opponent trip over their own lies. I was ready, and Lauren didn't see it coming. If this story's pulling you in, I hope you'll stay with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're out there. And in the comments, tell me, what's a time you outsmarted someone trying to push you down? And how did it feel? I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story. You ever stumble on something so wrong, it feels like the air's been sucked out of the room? That's what happened about 3 weeks after Nathan's funeral, when I found a piece of paper that showed just how far Lauren was willing to go. I was 63, still carrying the weight of losing my son, still holding tight to the deed. The receipt, the ultrasound proof, and Nathan's letter. I'd been baiting Lauren, dropping hints to make her squirm, and it was working. She was slipping, showing her fear. But this discovery, it was a gut punch, proof of her deceit in black and white. Let me tell you about that day, like we're sitting by my kitchen window, the coffee warm, the November roses stubborn against the cold. It's a story about seeing evil clear as day, about a mother's love that fights even when it hurts. Worthington was in the grip of late fall, the air sharp, the sycamores on Elm Street bare, their branches clawing at a grey sky. Our house, a 60s split level with white siding and a stone fireplace, stood steady. But inside, it was a war of whispers. I'd given my retirement savings to help Nathan and Lauren buy this place, and every creak of the oak floors, every bud in the backyard garden, held a piece of us. Lauren was tearing it apart, moving my things, faking a pregnancy, spreading rumors. I was confused, but I had the deed, the cashier's check receipt, Nathan's letter, and proof her ultrasound was a lie. I'd shared it all with Daniel Carter, my lawyer, who said we were building a strong case. Now, I was watching, waiting for Lauren's next move, and it came in a way I never expected. It started that morning, a Thursday, when I came downstairs to find Lauren in the den, her tote bag open on the desk, papers spilling out. The kitchen smelled of coffee and toast, the sunlight soft through the window, but the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. She was on the phone, her voice low, her blonde bun loose, her green eyes darting as she paced. "No, it's fine," she said. Her tone clipped. "I've got the documents ready." She doesn't know. My heart skipped, and I slipped into the hallway, My locket, the silver one, with Nathan's baby picture, warm against my chest. My breath shallow. Documents I'd baited her about paperwork, and now she was scrambling. She hung up, grabbing her bag and heading out, her SUV crunching gravel in the driveway. I waited until the engine faded, then moved to the den, my hands trembling, but my mind clear. The tote was still there, a folder peeking out, labeled estate. I shouldn't have looked. Snooping felt wrong, but Lauren's lies had changed the rules. I opened the folder, my fingers careful, and found a document titled Last Will and Testament of Nathan Foster. My breath caught. The signature at the bottom was Nathan's, or so it seemed, but the loops were off. Too neat, not like his messy scrawl. The date was March the 4th, a month after he died, and it named Lauren as sole heir, with no mention of me. Despite our deed, I stared, my heart pounding, the room tilting, a forged will. She'd faked Nathan's signature, dated it after his death, and planned to use it to claim the house. The metadata at the bottom showed it was created on her laptop. Lauren K. Drafts, not a lawyer's office. I snapped photos with my phone, my hand steady despite the rage in my chest. This wasn't just greed, it was betrayal, a knife in Nathan's memory. I thought of 2005 when Nathan confided in me about Lauren's control, how she'd pushed him to cut ties with friends. I don't know how to stop her. Mom, he'd said, his voice low. I hadn't pushed back then, thinking it wasn't my place, but now, I wished I had. I slipped the folder back, my mind racing. This was bigger than the ultrasound lie, bigger than the rumors. I called Daniel Carter's office, my voice low but firm. I found a forged will. I said to his secretary, "It's got Nathan's name, but it's not his. I have photos." She promised to pass it on, and I hung up. The deed, receipt, an ultrasound proof safe in my nightstand. Nathan's letter in my pocket. Daniel had said the deed was our strongest card, but this forgery could bury Lauren, show her for the liar she was. That evening, Lauren came home, her heels clicking as she breezed into the kitchen. I was at the table, knitting a scarf for the church bazaar, the needles clicking like a metronome. She carried a bag from Greyter's, the ice cream place Nathan loved, and set it on the counter. "Hey, Diane," she said, her voice bright. Too bright. "Got her some raspberry chip. Thought we could use a treat." "Thanks," I said, not looking up, my needles moving faster. Her kindness was a trap, always was. But I was ready. She leaned against the counter, her smartwatch glinting, her green eyes watching me. "You've been so quiet," she said, her tone soft, like she cared. "I know this is hard, with the baby coming. I just want us to be okay." I paused, my needles still, and looked at her. "Okay's a funny word," I said, my voice calm but sharp. "Depends on what's true, doesn't it?" Her smile faltered, and I saw it panic, raw and quick, before she covered it with a laugh. "You're so philosophical," she said, grabbing a spoon for the ice cream. "I was thinking, maybe we should talk about the house, with the baby. We'll need a fresh start." I set my knitting down, my locket heavy. "This house is my fresh start," I said, each word deliberate. Nathan made sure of that. She froze, her spoon halfway to the container, then recovered, forcing a smile. "You're so attached," she said, her voice tight. "It's sweet, but we have to think practically." I held her gaze, my voice soft but firm. "I'm thinking very practically," I said, "about what Nathan wanted, what's on paper." Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, we were locked, two players in a game she didn't know I was winning. She turned away, grabbing her phone, and headed upstairs, her footsteps quick. I exhaled, my heart racing but my resolve solid. I'd baited her again, and she was cracking, showing her fear. The forged will was my ace, and I'd play it when the time was right. That night, I sat in the garden, the air cool, the roses a shadow against the dusk. The porch light glowed, a beacon in the dark. I thought of 1980, when Nathan and I sat in our old rental's backyard, him asking why the stars shone so bright. "They're always there, honey," I'd said, "even when you can't see them." That truth was still here, in me, in this house. Lauren's forgery was a desperate move, but it had backfired. I had the photos, the deed, the receipt, the ultrasound proof, Nathan's letter, and Kyle's text. I was building a fortress, and she didn't see the walls rising. I went inside. The house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Lauren's door was closed, a faint light seeping under it. I paused, my hand on the locket, and felt Nathan with me. His voice in my head, "You're tough, Mom." I was. I'd see Daniel tomorrow, add the forged will to our case. Lauren thought she could rewrite our story, but she didn't know the strength of a mother's love, the kind that fights without flinching. I learned something that day. You know, evil can hide behind pretty lies, but it can't stand up to truth, not when you hold it tight and shine it bright. I was shining mine now, and Lauren's world was about to crack. If this story's pulling you in, I hope you'll stick with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're out there. And in the comments, tell me, what's a time you found proof that changed everything? And how did you use it? I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story. You ever stand in a moment so big, it feels like the whole world's holding its breath? That's what it was like in the courtroom, about a month after Nathan's funeral, when I faced Lauren and saw her lies unravel. I was 63, carrying the weight of losing my son, but also the strength of every piece I'd gathered: his letter, the deed, the receipt, the forged will, the fake ultrasound. Lauren thought she could erase me from our house on Elm Street, but I'd been building my case, quiet and steady, with Daniel Carter by my side. Let me share this day with you, like we're sitting by my fireplace, the coffee warm, the November roses blooming despite the frost. It's a story about truth breaking through, about a mother's love that holds fast, no matter the odds. Worthington was in the heart of late fall, the air sharp, the sycamores on Elm Street bare, their branches etching the sky. Our house, a 60s split level, with white siding and a stone fireplace, stood steady, a beacon of everything Nathan and I had built. I'd given my retirement savings to help him and Lauren buy it, and every creak of the oak floors, every bud in the backyard garden, held a piece of us. Lauren had tried to tear it apart moving my things, faking a pregnancy, forging a will, but I had proof: the deed with my name, the cashier's check receipt, Nathan's letter, Kyle's text, and photos of her lies. Daniel Carter, my lawyer, had said we were ready, and today, in a Columbus courtroom, we'd lay it all bare. It started that morning, a cold Tuesday, when I drove to the Franklin County Courthouse, my old Honda rattling past the Worthington Village Square, its lights twinkling in the dawn. Columbus smelled of asphalt and coffee, the city waking slow under a grey sky. I parked near the courthouse, a brick building with tall windows, and clutched my locket, the silver one with Nathan's baby picture, as I walked inside. My cardigan felt thin against the chill, but my heart was warm, steady, like a fire that wouldn't go out. Daniel met me in the lobby, his grey hair neat, his Buckeyes tie a nod to Nathan. "You ready?" "Diane," he asked, his eyes kind but sharp. "As I'll ever be," I said, my voice calm despite the knot in my stomach. I'd given him everything: the deed, the receipt, the ultrasound photos, the forged will, Kyle's text, Nathan's letters. Today, it would speak for me. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, with polished wood benches and a faint smell of paper and wax. I sat beside Daniel, My hands folded, the locket heavy against my chest. Lauren was across the aisle, in a cream blazer, her blonde bun sleek, clutching a folder with the fake ultrasound like a prop. Her lawyer, a slick guy in a pinstripe suit, whispered to her, and she nodded, her green eyes avoiding mine. The judge, a woman with grey curls and a no-nonsense look, called the hearing to order, her gavel a sharp crack in the quiet. Daniel stood, his voice steady. Your Honor, my client, Diane Foster, is a co-owner of the property at 214 Elm Street, Worthington, as evidenced by the original deed, filed in 2000. He handed over the document, my signature clear, beside Nathan's, notarized and untouched. Mrs. Foster contributed $50,000 to the down payment. As shown by this cashier's check receipt, she has resided there for 7 years, establishing her legal rights. The judge nodded, reviewing the papers, her glasses glinting. I glanced at Lauren, her face tight, her fingers gripping the folder. Daniel continued, his tone measured but firm. The respondent, Lauren Hayes, has attempted to evict Mrs. Foster, claiming sole ownership based on a forged will, dated after Nathan Foster's death. He presented the will, the signature off, the metadata screaming Lauren's laptop. We also have evidence of a falsified ultrasound used to manipulate sympathy, dated 4 weeks ago, not 8, as claimed. The courtroom was silent, the air thick with tension. Lauren's lawyer stood, his voice smooth but strained. Your Honor, my client is a grieving widow, expecting a child, and seeks only to honor her husband's wishes. The will reflects his intent, and Mrs. Foster's claims are based on outdated documents. Daniel didn't flinch. The will is a fraud, he said, handing over the metadata printout. Created on Mrs. Hayes' laptop, post-dated to March the 4th, after Nathan Foster's death on February 2nd. The ultrasound, too, is inconsistent, dated 4 weeks ago, not 8, as Mrs. Hayes claims. He presented Kyle's text. Nathan's words clear Lauren's obsessed with the house. I don't trust her. I felt a pang, hearing Nathan's voice through those words, but also pride. He'd seen her, even then. The judge leaned forward, her eyes sharp as she reviewed the evidence. I looked at Lauren, her shoulders sinking, her face pale, the folder slipping from her hands. Her lawyer whispered something, but she shook her head, her mouth twitching like she wanted to scream. I sat steady, my locket warm, and thought of 1980 when Nathan and I sat in our old rental's backyard, him asking why the stars shone so bright. They're always there, honey, I'd said, even when you can't see them. That truth was here now, shining in this courtroom, and Lauren couldn't dim it. The judge cleared her throat, her voice clear. Counselor, this is extremely clear, she said, holding the deed. The original deed, filed in 2000, establishes Mrs. Foster as a co-owner. The cashier's check confirms her financial contribution. The alleged will, with its inconsistencies and metadata, is subject to fraud investigation. All eviction claims are void. Temporary ownership freeze lifted. Mrs. Foster retains legal co-ownership. A wave of relief washed over me, warm and deep, like sunlight breaking through clouds. I felt Nathan beside me, his grin wide, his hand on my shoulder. Daniel squeezed my arm, his eyes crinkling. Lauren's lawyer whispered frantically, but she just stared at the floor, her blazer crumpled, her facade shattered. The judge's gavel fell, a final crack, and it was over. I'd won not just the house, but the truth, Nathan's memory, my place. We left the courtroom, the air outside cold but fresh. Columbus waking under a pale sun. Daniel walked me to my car, his Buckeyes tie bright against his suit. She'll push back or pack her bags, he said, his voice calm. Either way, you're solid. Keep those documents safe. I will, I said, my voice thick. Thank you, Daniel. For Nathan. He nodded, his eyes soft. For Nathan. I drove home, the Honda's heater rattling, my locket warm against my chest. Elm Street welcomed me. The sycamores bare but proud, the house glowing in the dusk. I parked, my hand steady, and stepped inside. The oak floors creaking under my feet. The kitchen smelled of coffee and quiche, the roses outside a shadow against the night. I thought of 1990 when Nathan and I signed the deed. Him teasing me about my fancy signature. This is our forever home, Mom, he'd said. And we'd split a Grater's ice cream, raspberry chip dripping on our hands. That home was mine again, not because I'd shouted, but because I'd stood, quiet and fierce. Lauren wasn't home, her SUV gone, probably licking her wounds. I sat in the living room, the new leather chair still out of place, and pulled out Nathan's letter. His words steady, don't let her take everything. I hadn't. I'd fought for him, for us, and I'd won. The blank spot on the mantel, where our photo used to be, felt less like a wound now, more like a space to fill. I'd put it back, I decided, and more. Make this house ours again. I went to the garden, the air cool, the roses dormant but alive, their buds tight against the frost. The porch light glowed, a beacon in the dark. I knelt, my fingers brushing the soil, and felt Nathan's hands next to mine, planting those first bushes. We're a team, Mom, he'd said, and I still believed it. Lauren's lies had crumbled, but my love for Nathan, for this home, stood tall. I stood, my knees aching, and looked at the house, its windows warm. This was my place, my root, and I'd hold it. I learned something that day, you know. Truth doesn't need to shout, it just needs to stand, steady and clear, and the lies will fall around it. I'd stood, and Lauren's world had cracked. If this story's pulling you in, I hope you'll stay with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're out there. And in the comments, tell me, what's a time you stood up for what's right, and how did it feel to win? I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story. You ever watch someone leave and feel both relief and a strange kind of sadness? Like letting go of a storm that's torn through your life. That's what it was like the day Lauren left our house on Elm Street, a few days after the courtroom victory that gave me back my home. I was 63, still carrying the weight of Nathan's loss, but lighter now, with the deed, the receipt, his letter, and the truth shining bright. Lauren had tried to erase me, faking a pregnancy, forging a will, spreading lies, but she'd lost. And now she was packing. Let me share this moment with you. Like we're sitting in my kitchen, the coffee warm, the November roses catching the last light. It's a story about closing a chapter, about a mother's love that forgives even when it doesn't forget. Worthington was in the final days of fall, the air crisp, the sycamores on Elm Street bare, their branches soft against a pale sky. Our house, a 60s split level with white siding and a stone fireplace, stood proud, its oak floors creaking with stories, its backyard garden blooming with Nathan's roses. I'd given my retirement savings to help him and Lauren buy this place, and every corner held a piece of us. Lauren had tried to unravel it, moving my quilts, tossing Nathan's trophies, scheming to sell, but the courtroom had spoken. The deed was mine. Her forged will was fraud, her lies exposed. Daniel Carter, my lawyer, had warned she might push back, but I knew she was out of moves. It started that morning, a quiet Wednesday, when I woke to the sound of cardboard boxes scraping in the hallway. I pulled on my cardigan, my locket, the silver one with Nathan's baby picture warm against my chest, and stepped out to find Lauren's room a mess of packing. Boxes lined the floor, some labeled clothes. others tape barely holding them shut, like she'd packed in a hurry. She was in the kitchen, rummaging through a drawer, her blonde hair loose, her sweater wrinkled. The room smelled of coffee and toast, the sunlight slanting through the window, catching the dust motes in the air. I stood in the doorway, my hands in my pockets. Nathan's letter a quiet wait. "Morning," I said, my voice calm, not cold. She glanced up, her green eyes tired, no trace of her usual polish. "Morning," she muttered, pulling out a spatula, then tossing it back like it didn't matter. She didn't look at me, just kept moving, like she could outrun the truth. I grabbed a mug, pouring coffee, the steam curling like a memory. "You need help with anything?" I asked, not because I wanted to, but because I wanted to see her react. She froze, her hand on the drawer, then forced a smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm good," she said, her voice tight. "I'll be out by Friday." I nodded, sipping my coffee, my locket heavy. "All right," I said, letting the silence stretch. She turned away, her shoulders stiff, and I saw it defeat, raw and real, but also defiance, like she wasn't done fighting, even now. I thought of 1998, when Nathan gave me this locket for my birthday, his grin hard as he clasped it around my neck. "So, you'll always have me close, Mom," he'd said. And I'd hugged him, tears in my eyes. That love was still here, in this house, in me. Lauren had tried to break it, but she'd failed. I didn't need to gloat, I needed to heal, to make this place ours again. That afternoon, I went to the living room, where the new leather chair still sat, cold and out of place. I dragged it to the garage, my arms aching but my heart light, and brought back Nathan's old recliner. The one Lauren had donated. Clara had saved it, stashing it in her shed, and now it was home, its worn fabric soft under my hands. I set the family photo back on the mantel, Nathan, Lauren, and me at the Worthington Arts Festival, all smiles, and felt a weight lift. This was my place, and I was taking it back. Clara stopped by later, her scarf fluttering, a plate of zucchini bread in hand. We sat in the kitchen, the bread warm on the table, the air smelling of cinnamon and coffee. "She's really going?" Clara asked, her eyes sharp. "Friday," I said, slicing a piece. Court said it all. Clara nodded, her jaw tight. "Good riddance. You're tougher than she ever was." "Diane." I smiled, her words a balm. "I had to be," I said. "For Nathan." She squeezed my hand, her grip firm. "He'd be proud. You know, whole town's talking about how you stood up." I looked at her, my throat tight. "Thanks. Clara, means more than you know." After she left, I sat in the recliner, knitting a scarf for the church bazaar, the needles clicking like a heartbeat. I thought of 1985 when Nathan and I planted roses in the backyard, him patting the soil, his freckled face bright. "They'll live forever." "Right." "Mom," he'd ask, and I'd nodded, believing it. Those roses were still there, tough as ever. And so was I. Lauren's departure wasn't the end, it was a new beginning. That evening, Lauren tried one last move. I was in the den, sorting photos, when I found a USB drive on the coffee table, silver and unlabeled, like a taunt. My stomach twisted. Lauren didn't leave things by accident. I plugged it into Nathan's old laptop, the one she never touched, and opened a video file labeled Open Me. Her face filled the screen, sitting in Nathan's office chair, her voice calm but smug. "If you're watching this, I'm gone," she said. "I did what I had to. Diane, you were never meant to stay forever. Nathan wanted you out, but he didn't have the guts to say it." I paused the video, my jaw tight, her words a knife in my heart. Even now, she was trying to poison my bond with Nathan. I hit play, her voice colder now. I told him we could build something if he let go of you. He was weak, so I did it for him. Keep the house, but you'll never forget this. The screen went black, and I sat there, the silence heavy, my locket warm against my chest. I could have kept it, shown it to Daniel, used it to bury her deeper. But I didn't. I ejected the USB, tossed it in the trash, and deleted the file. Not because I was afraid, but because I didn't need her poison. I had Nathan's letter, his words true and steady. Don't let her take everything. Mom. He'd loved me, and nothing Lauren said could change that. I chose to let go, not of the fight, but of the hate. It was my victory, quiet and fierce. The next morning, Lauren was in the kitchen, her bags by the door, her face pale, makeup smudged like she hadn't slept. I stood in the doorway, my coffee mug warm, my locket heavy. You don't have to do this, she said, her voice low, almost pleading. We could work something out. I looked at her, steady and calm. You did this. Lauren, I said. Not me. She stepped back, her eyes flashing, like she wanted me to yell, to give her a reason to paint me as the villain. But I didn't. I opened the door, the November air cool, and said, You have until midnight. She hesitated, her bag in hand, then whispered, Where am I supposed to go? I met her gaze, my voice soft but firm. Anywhere that isn't here. She stood on the porch for a full minute, frozen, before walking to her SUV, slamming the trunk, and driving off without looking back. I closed the door. The house quiet. The oak floors creaking under my feet. I didn't cry, didn't cheer, just felt done, like a storm had passed, leaving clear skies. I went to the garden, the roses dormant but alive, and whispered, We're okay now. Nathan. The porch light glowed, a beacon in the dusk, and I knew I was home. I learned something that day. You know, forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. Letting go of the weight so you can stand tall. I'd fought for this house, but I'd won something bigger peace for me, for Nathan. If this story's touching your heart, I hope you'll stay with me. Hit that subscribe button to keep up. It means the world to know you're out there. And in the comments, tell me, what's a time you let go of anger to find peace? And how did it feel I read every word? And I'd love to hear your story. You ever step into a moment so full of peace it feels like the world's finally set right? That's how it was a week after Lauren left, when I stood in my garden on Elm Street, planting a new rose bush under the November sun. I was 63, carrying the scars of losing Nathan, but also the strength of winning back our home, our split-level haven, with its oak floors and stone fireplace. Lauren had tried to erase me with her lies, faked pregnancy, forged will, rumors, but the courtroom had spoken, and my heart had chosen forgiveness over hate. Let me share this final chapter with you, like we're sitting in my kitchen, the coffee warm, the roses outside blooming despite the frost. It's a story about coming home, about a mother's love that builds and heals, no matter the years. Worthington was easing out of fall, the air soft, the sycamores on Elm Street bare but graceful, their shadows dancing across the lawns. Our house stood proud, its white siding glowing in the morning light, its garden alive with Nathan's roses. I'd given my retirement savings to help him and Lauren buy this place, and every creak of the floors, every flicker of the porch light, held a piece of us. The courtroom had affirmed my place here, the deed was mine. Lauren's lies exposed and her departure had left a quiet that wasn't empty, but full, like a house breathing again. I was ready to make it ours, to fill it with love and memory. It started that morning, a crisp Saturday, when I woke early, the house still except for the hum of the fridge. I pulled on my cardigan, my locket, the silver one with Nathan's baby picture warm against my chest, and went to the kitchen. The room smelled of coffee and cinnamon, the sunlight slanting through the window, catching the dust motes in the air. I'd brought back Nathan's old recliner, set our family photo on the mantel, Nathan, Lauren, and me at the Worthington Arts Festival, all smiles, and hung his old Reds cap on a hook by the door. The blank spots Lauren left were filling, not with anger, but with him. I decided to host a small gathering, not a performance like Lauren's, but a real one, for the folks who'd stood by me: Clara Thompson, Kyle Brennan, and a few from the church knitting circle. I wanted to share Nathan's story, to thank them, to make this house a home again. I spent the morning baking apple pie, the kind Nathan loved, its crust golden, its scent filling the air. I set up tables in the backyard, under the sycamores, with checkered tablecloths and mason jars of cider from the farmer's market. The garden was quiet, the roses dormant but alive, their buds tight against the cool air. Clara arrived first, her scarf fluttering, a tray of zucchini bread in hand. "Look at this spread," she said, her eyes sharp but warm. "You're making this place sing again." "Diane." I smiled, setting out plates, trying to... I said, "It's for Nathan." She squeezed my arm, her grip firm. "He's here, you know, in every bit of this." Kyle came next, his broad shoulders filling the doorway, a bottle of North High brewing beer in hand. "Smells like home," he said, his voice thick. "Nathan'd love this." I nodded, my throat tight. "That's the idea," I said, leading him to the yard. By noon, the backyard was full. Clara, Kyle, Mrs. Delaney from the market, and half the knitting circle, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. The sun was high, the air cool but kind, and the roses seemed to lean in, listening. I stood by the new rose bush I'd planted, its tag reading "Nathan's Pride," and raised a glass of cider. "Thank you all for being here," I said, my voice steady but soft. "This house, this garden, it's Nathan's, mine, ours. Lauren tried to take it, but you helped me hold on, to him, to home." Clara raised her glass, her eyes shining. "To Nathan," she said, and the others echoed, their voices warm, like a hymn. Kyle caught my eye, nodding, his face lined with pride. Mrs. Delaney patted my hand, whispering, "You're a strong one, Diane." I smiled, my locket heavy, feeling Nathan with me, his grin wide, his hand on my shoulder. We ate pie and bread, shared stories of Nathan, his coaching, his laugh, his love for Buckeyes games. Kyle told about the time Nathan taught a kid to hit a home run, free of charge, just because he believed in him. Clara recalled Nathan helping her fix a fence, his Reds cap tipped back, joking the whole time. I listened, my heart full, the garden alive with their voices. I thought of 1975 when I first held Nathan, his tiny hand curling around my finger, his eyes so like mine. "You're my world," I'd whispered, and he still was, here, in this house, in these people. As the sun dipped, casting gold across the yard, I stood by the rose bush, my fingers brushing its leaves. Clara joined me, her scarf loose. "You did good." "Diane," she said, her voice gruff but warm, "this place is yours again." I nodded, my throat tight. "Ours," I said, "Nathan's and mine." She smiled, squeezing my arm, always was. Kyle came over, his beer bottle empty, his eyes soft. "Nathan'd be proud," he said. "You fought like hell." "Diane." I looked at him, my locket warm. "Had to." I said, "For him." He nodded, his voice low. "Anything you need, I'm here. We all are." I smiled, the weight of their support like a quilt, warm and steady. The gathering wound down, folks drifting out with hugs and promises to visit. I cleaned up alone, the yard quiet, the stars peeking through the dusk. I went inside, the house alive with the echo of laughter, the smell of pie lingering. I sat in Nathan's recliner, the photo on the mantel glowing in the lamplight, and pulled out his letter, its words worn but true. Don't let her take everything. Mom. I hadn't. I'd fought, forgiven, and rebuilt. I thought of 1982 when Nathan and I baked cookies in our old rental's kitchen, him sneaking dough, me pretending not to notice. Worth it. Mom. He'd grinned, and I'd laughed, ruffling his hair. That joy was still here, in the walls, in the roses, in me. I'd lost him, but I hadn't lost us. I went to the garden, the air cool, the new rosebush standing proud. We're okay now. Nathan, I whispered, my fingers brushing the soil. The porch light glowed, a beacon in the dark, and I knew I was home not just in the house, but in myself. The next morning, I woke early, the house still except for the hum of the fridge. I pulled on my cardigan, my locket warm, and went to the kitchen, brewing coffee, the scent mixing with the cinnamon of last night's pie. I sat at the table, knitting a scarf for the church bazaar, the needles clicking like a heartbeat. The blank spots Lauren left were gone, filled with Nathan's things, with love. I'd hang more photos, plant more roses, make this place sing again. I was 63 and I'd learnt something: you're never too old to fight, to love, to start over. I went to the garden, the sun rising, the roses catching the light. I knelt, my knees aching, and planted a new bud, its tag reading Hope. I thought of 1990 when Nathan and I signed the deed, him teasing me about my fancy signature. This is our forever home. Mom, he'd said, and it was because of him, because of me, because of love. I stood, the garden alive, the house steady, and felt peace, deep and true, like a river finding its course. I learnt something through all this. You know, no matter how many years you carry, you're never too old to stand tall, to love yourself enough to fight, to build a home that sings your name. Lauren took her lies and left, but I stayed, and I'm stronger for it. This house, these roses, this life, they're mine, and they're enough. If this story's touched your heart, I hope you'll carry it with you. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected. It means the world to know you're out there. And in the comments, tell me, what's a time you rebuilt something you loved, and how did it make you whole? I read every word, and I'd love to hear your story.